You can imagine if ice were to disappear, how the entire ecosystem would collapse. And that's a very, very scary thing. Alright, so we did talk about the food, the necessity for food when it comes to these belugas in the Arctic, but there are other communities in the country that have beluga populations which aren't quite as scarcely populated when it comes from a human standpoint. Anyone here from Toronto or Montreal? Yes. Alright, well you folks are very lucky. You are Canada's two most populated cities, but you also have Canada's smallest beluga population in that area. There you go. There's a population of about 1,000 beluga whales that live in the St. Lawrence River, and that's all part of the Great Lake Basin. Basically, water stems from the Great Lakes, up into the St. Lawrence, and then out into the Atlantic Ocean. Now, though the people, I'm sure most of you don't rely on beluga for sustenance, those that live in that area, no? Not quite? Now, you might not rely on it from a nutritional perspective, but a lot of people do rely on it from an economic perspective. There are several whale-watching companies that operate right in that area, and what they would see if they go on those whale-watching expeditions, well, they would see exactly what you're seeing from some of our belugas right now. Their backs. Okay, so not very exciting, right? Well, that's what it seems like, but it's actually very, very important, particularly for scientists and for researchers. Now, you notice that these animals don't have what other whales might have on their back. What do they not have? No dorsal fin, that's right. Instead, they've got the dorsal ridge. You can see each ridge is individual. They got little knots, little nicks in them, and each bump is individual to each individual beluga. So, taking pictures, creating a photo ID catalog, it does allow us to track individual populations, see where greater populations are going, and just looking at trends in general in certain areas. And the St. Lawrence obviously would be huge to know where these animals are headed, because they are facing several problems, which we're going to get into right now. So, what problems could a St. Lawrence freshwater population be facing that an Arctic population wouldn't be facing? What are the two major challenges they would be facing up there? Toxins. Yes, pollution is one. And boats, thank you very much. Yes, those are the two correct answers. So, talking about pollution, let's start with that. People that live in that area can tell you the Great Lakes, not the cleanest of lakes in the world. It may be some of the largest, but it's definitely not the cleanest. So what happens is a lot of the toxins and chemicals come from the Great Lakes and into the St. Lawrence, so right into these belugas' homes. And what's happening is a lot of the blubber and tissue sampling that we're doing with these animals is actually showing an increase in toxin levels in their bodies. So all that toxic runoff coming from the Great Lakes and into their homes is actually having a drastic impact on their health and their well-being. So that's a serious problem, because if they keep going at that rate, they might not be able to do cool stuff like that, and that would just be very, very sad. The second thing we mentioned was boats, and that's another kind of pollution. We call it noise pollution. Before we get into that, though, I want to give you a bit of framework. Shallows and estuaries are beautiful natural nursing grounds for belugas. Basically the areas where oceans and rivers are going to meet, sand gets stirred up, as it is very, very shallow water, and baby belugas are going to be born there. Now, when people look at young belugas like Tika working with Katie over there, you think, wow, she's a weird color. What are you feeding your belugas? What are you doing? Stop it. Whatever you're doing. Don't panic. It's totally natural. Belugas, thank you, you're like the one person that laughed. I appreciate it. They're supposed to be gray. That's a natural form of camouflage that these animals do have. Because they're born in those shallow, murky waters, the babies are able to camouflage their surroundings so they can learn the essential